tonight we got Michaelis Jacoby. And Michaelis was a very, very popular DJ. In fact, he performed in Bali and he performed in Moscow, Russia, and probably in many other places. And we'll find out today. He also, too, is an author of a self help book. And we're going to ask Jacoby how he got to that point where he wrote this book to help other people and what was the things that transpired for Jacoby to do that writing. So anyway, um, let me introduce Michaelis Jacoby to everybody that's feeling down there. And he's one of our co-hosts. He's a documentarian. He's done documentaries, and he's also too an author. We got Zandine. He's an entertainer. He likes to dance and all kinds of crazy stuff. And he's also too a paranormal investigator like myself. So Nicholas, I don't know where to start off. Well, one thing is, let's start off with your DJ. How did you become a DJ?
Well, it's drugs, of course. Doing a lot of drugs. That was helpful. Yeah, I mean, back when I was 18, 19, I just fell out of college and went to jail for my first time for residential burglary and aggravated assault. I decided to move to Venice Beach, California, because that's a very opportune place that's conducive to sobriety if you've got a drug problem. And across the street from where I used to live was like a bunch of sort of old school ravers. And I just happened to walk across the street one time and I met them. And I actually fell in love with house music, which is kind of funny because, you know, I had no interest in anything electronic or pop in any kind of way. Uh, I was kind of into death metal and stuff like that when I was a kid. And I thought this other kind of music, like dance music, was just kind of whack. But anyway, I really liked drugs a lot. And all these guys were doing drugs. So I was like, shit, you know, and I liked girls a lot too. And they were doing that too. So that was kind of like my first introduction to
I don't
house
know.
music. We used to go to clubs every single night, and I would watch the DJs. And I thought what they were doing was really cool. And then eventually, to do more drugs, we would go to downtown LA and go to these like after-hour parties at my buddy's house, and he had a set of turntables over there. And he had turntables for I think years at that point, and he was a horrible DJ. He would train wreck every single song. You know what I mean? And I just remember watching him one day train wrecking music, and I thought to myself, well, if he's trying it and it sounds that bad, I mean, maybe I can't be that much worse, right? And so I got on the turntables, and it was a very natural thing for me to like put beats together and match them. And then I started like, you know, dreaming about different songs that I hear at different places and how they would blend together. And then a bunch of friends of mine basically did a bunch of credit card fraud because that kind of goes along with the drug thing. And they wound up stealing a bunch of turntables. And so now we had our own setup and our own spot. And I would just, you know, spin records. And then I was homeless for a while, lived in my buddy's garage for about 8 months. And the only thing that was there were drugs and turntables. And so I basically just spun records in the garage for about 8 months and got good at it, you know? And so that really sort of launched my passion for this. And kind of the reason why I knew that I was passionate about the music is because prior to music, I was really passionate about basically having sex with women. And there were times where I was like living in this garage where girls would come over. There's like this little couch behind the DJ setup, and they would just get naked on the couch. And I would not give a fuck because I would just want to be like spitting music. So I would think to myself, oh shit, maybe I actually love this more than I love like anything else. And so I just kind of pursued that. I remember I got booked my first like house party job, and that was really cool. And then, you know, my life got really out of control. I wound up going to prison for 25 years to life on a manufacturing charge. And I got sort of saved from that experience by the universe because it's always conspiring in my favor. And
I don't
yeah, I
know.
put DJing aside for about a year and a half because I didn't think that DJing and sobriety were conducive. But I met a dude who was a graduate of the sober living house that I was in. And he was also a DJ. And so we became friends and he took me out to my first club in sobriety. And I wound up running into all my friends there and they were tore the fuck up, which solidified the idea that like, oh shit, I really don't want to be doing drugs anymore, but I like music. So I think my uncle got me a set of turntables when I turned a year sober. And yeah, I started there. And
I
I
don't
thought it was
know.
just going to be a hobby because people told me that you couldn't make a career out of something like that and stay sober. And then at some point in my life, I just realized I don't give a fuck what other people think I should be doing. I want to do what makes me happy. And I always enjoyed spinning records. I always enjoyed music. My creativity on the turntables really expanded where I wasn't like confined to a certain sort of electronic music genre. I was kind of into live remixing and scratching and stuff like that. And then Serato was introduced to the world, the digital DJing, which I can still do on vinyl. And my career basically took off from there. So
I
that's
don't
how
know.
it happened.
Nicholas, how is it that you they sent you like to Bali and to Moscow, Russia to perform your DJ work?
Well, I had an ex girlfriend of mine who was much older than me, who was very wealthy, who started her career doing interior design for like a bunch of different rock stars, Rod Stewart and a whole bunch of different people. And she was very good friends with Steven Tyler. She then like started managing actors and she created the Brat Pack. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Tommy
Yeah.
Davis Jr.
Robert Downey Jr., Sarah Jessica Parker, like all those folks. So she managed all those actors.
Yeah, St. Elmo's Firecast.
Totally. Judd Nelson, all those people, right? And then she basically got tired of dealing with what she used to call babies and babysitting. So she decided to launch a jewelry line. And she launched this very famous jewelry line that actually is in the Smithsonian now because Michelle Obama wore it at the inauguration or whatever. But she was good friends with Steven Tyler. Steven Tyler is performing in Russia. He invited her to this party. She was throwing a party for Aerosmith at this store called Podium, which is a very high-end store. I mean, it got multiple stores all over Moscow. And she asked me if I would DJ the party. And so I had to like create sort of a live remix mashup of a bunch of different Aerosmith songs, and I performed there. And then I met this dude who knew this guy who played at clubs out there, and I just asked him like, "Look, man, I'll play for free. Just let me in a club, give me a set, and if you like it, great." And I went, I played a set, had nothing to do with Aerosmith or anything I played over there, but it was like club music, and they loved it. And I wound up talking to some people, and they decided to manage me over there. And basically, for the next 2 years or so, I toured back and forth between here and Russia. I played all over Russia. Yeah, it was sick.
Well, that's incredible. Um, Also, too, I see that when you were in Bali and stuff, you sent me like one of your demo tapes or was something, and it just shows everybody just having a good time partying. There was one picture, and it almost looks like 1,000 people out there. Um, how how did you become so popular DJing like that?
By the time I got to Bali, so what really launched my career in LA was I started DJing at a place called Supper Club. And
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
it's like the club going up on Tuesday, all of McKenna and Drake, like that shit was all about that club. YG talks about Supper Club. So Tuesday nights was like the big hip hop night. You know, my homie like DJ Bad, BAD, he used to play with and like the guy who hosted his name was Sincere, the Sincere Show. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but like basically all the biggest hip hop artists used to always show up on Tuesday night. And I used to just go because I was a resident DJ, but I was resident there for like Friday, Saturday, and I think like Wednesdays or Thursdays or something. But I used to go there because at that time in my life, I really didn't understand hip hop, you know, because I came from like a house music vibe, which to me, like the energies there is like very obvious. So I really wanted to like see like how hip hop, because it's so much slower, really has that energy. So I used to just watch, and I became really close friends with the DJ who played that night, and I just got better at DJing hip hop. And so when I got to Bali, they had hip hop nights there, but like the hits over in Bali at the time I got there, this was like 2014, was like KRS, Sound of the Police, Nelly, Ride It, and like throwing in some like old Jackson 5 shit. And like I remember getting booked my first night as a DJ there, and I was like dropping ASAP Ferg work and like, you know, some like other kind of stuff that's to me the hip hop that I exposed to. And I think that because I was like so current with today's hip hop, I really blew up over there. And I kind of became like the hip hop DJ in Bali. So I had my own night over there for a while. I basically opened up my own venue there with some people. And yeah, it just kind of took off. And then I started traveling from Bali to all these other different islands because they didn't really have like a lot of hip hop DJs, you know? And then it was just kind of like open format DJing. And so, yeah, I just became popular doing that kind of stuff.
That is cool. That's cool. um, Also, too, you're an author of a book. What is the name of that book?
It's called The Spiritual Revolution, A Precise Path to Personal Peace.
And what inspired you to write that book?
Man, there's a lot of shit that inspired me to write that stuff. Um, a few things. There was a few of my friends that died. Uh, Two of them were drug related, and one was just a suicide. The suicide that I'm talking about happened while I was in Bali. And he was like this young, up and coming Balinese DJ, had everything going for him. And one New Year's Eve, he DJ'd a club and then drove off to a bridge in Uluwatu, which is like in southern Bali, and jumped. And by this time in my life, you know, I've been sober 25 years today. And at that time, I had maybe 20 years of sobriety or something like that, 23 years of sobriety, 22 years of sobriety. I can't really remember, but I just saw like sobriety is really like alcoholism and drug addiction. It's really rooted in like people who have an abnormal reaction to drugs and alcohol. And once you remove the drugs and alcohol from those people, then they're just dealing with the human condition, which is a lot of delusional thinking, cognitive distortion, and a lot of maladaptive feelings and coping mechanisms as a result of that stuff. And I remember BLM was happening, COVID was happening, politics were happening, and I was watching all this stuff that was going on in the world from my phone and just seeing all this unrest with people who just didn't have a practice or path to launch themselves into the present, which is typically always fine. Like the truth of right now is I'm just sitting here talking to you guys. Like there's no politics happening in this room right now. There's no war happening in this room right now. There's no bills to pay. There's nothing going on. So why would I have an emotional experience to anything right now other than gratitude? But also like tapping into their own power. They're not lending power to this delusional idea of leaders or lending their power to the pursuit of money, or power to the pursuit of prestige and all this stuff. So I just saw that the world really needed a path, and I had one. Like all that stuff going on, I felt at peace and I felt happy. And it was a very simple path to get there. It was just basically a path rooted in altruism and a practice of unconditional love. So I was like, if I could give that to everybody else and just remove the alcoholism and drug addiction aspect of it, why not? Dude.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Uh, well,
Yeah,
thank,
you
thank.
open up your home. By
Oh,
doing that, you open up your
go
health
ahead.
like everybody else's.
Say it again.
By doing that, you opened up your health and everybody else's like the morning sunshine.
That's right, because we're all the light of God, right? But we just don't know it. So that's the thing. The thing that gets in the way of us understanding what we truly are is just our over identification with self, right? So self can be identified with how old we are, what we look like, what our accomplishments are or not, what partners we have and what we don't, all that kind of stuff, you know? And when we understand that what we really are is a power that is much greater than that, and we tap into that power by just getting into the flow of the universe, which I truly believe is an expression of unconditional love, then nothing has power over us. Because if I'm just trying to be the blessing to whatever's in front of me without any expectation of reciprocation, just like the universe doesn't expect anything from me, who could fuck with me? What situation can? If I don't want anything from anybody, you know? So I think that if more people understood what they were and what their divine purpose on this earth was, they feel at peace. And then we wouldn't even have these conversations about politics because we would understand that we don't need a fucking leader because the leader is within ourselves. So that's what I think.
So let me ask you, Jacoby, what part of the self versus the psychological things of other people versus real entities or other energies we don't know about, perhaps, undocumented. And so I'm basically saying, in the light of like three situations like that, how would you, because what I'm saying is when you say about love taking over everything, I do believe that you can't be absolutely intelligent. Like you could be smart, say like the Borg, you could have all the smarts you want, but if you're evil, you're ultimately not absolutely intelligent. You're not loving like that. So it's like, um, from somebody psychologically thinking that, um, these things exist to make them do something bad, like get high or take on a spirit, versus an actual demon, versus a notion, an archetype. Where do you stand on that of what's actually making you do it? Do you think it's all self that's making you do it?
Well, let's look at the manifestations of self, right? So the manifestations of self or symptoms of self are pride, anger, greed, lust, envy, sloth, and gluttony, right?
Of self or of the devil?
Well, that's the thing. Like, what's the difference? Is God and the devil the same man or person?
I mean, depend on what you believe.
That's the thing. So I believe that every single person has the capacity to be God, and I think every single person has the capacity to be the devil. And really, it's about what plant that you water that grows, and but the plant exists within ourselves, right? So if we're in a diligent practice of selflessness, an altruistic practice, we get more connected to God because we become more God-like, you know. But that's of course if you believe in a God that's unconditionally loving, right? Because the truth of this is that the word God doesn't mean shit. It is just a word, right? Just like the word love. So you say love to people, and some people think of puppies, some people think of divorce, some people think of sex, some people think of marriage, lawn walks on the beach, whatever, right? So love, God, both abstract. So then it's okay, cool. If we are trying to have an experience with God, and my experience is composed of my thoughts and my feelings, and how I figure out what my concept of God is really just asking myself, how do I want to feel as I exist on this earth? And if I want to feel at peace as I exist on this earth, which seems like a logical choice because it doesn't seem logical to pick a life of depression, anxiety, fear, anger, any of that stuff, right? Self pity. Then the easiest concept of God for me to believe in order to feel peaceful is one of unconditional love. Because if I believe that the universal power is loving me, wanting the best for me, taking care of me unconditionally, then that means I don't got to trip with my future because that shit's taken care of. It means I don't have to feel like shit about my past because obviously I was loved through that, you know, otherwise I would be sitting here in front of you guys right now. But I could also believe that I could, you know, that every single situation that's presented to me in each moment was perfectly designed for me. Now, if I don't know how long I'm going to be on this earth, right? And let's say I choose to believe that and I'm fucking wrong. I spend the rest of my life feeling at peace because that was my choice belief. Who gives a fuck? You know what I mean? Because it's about my life experience now. So, in terms of other entities and stuff like that, I mean, in Balinese culture, they definitely believe in possession. You know, they do ceremonies where people get possessed by other spirits. And I also believe that, you know, alcohol and drugs in its own way is a possession. I believe it opens up the doors to other entities and stuff like that. I do believe that exists, but I also believe that nothing is more powerful than unconditional love. I don't think anything can trump that. I don't think anything can knock that over. And I've had experience of that in my own personal life. Like I went to a meeting the other day, Well, you want to ask a question or sorry?
Well, I'm saying, yeah, I agree with you on that love,
Yeah.
on the unconditional love. No, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I went to a meeting the other night, right? And I was sharing. I only have 15 minutes to share, which was basically like talk about the 12-step program, right? And some guy got up and shared, and he was himself, and he was angry, and he said, "I fucking hated your share. I didn't know who you are. I can't trust you. Blah blah blah. If I wanted a 15-minute dissertation on the 12-step program, I would have asked this fool's wife to say it. You know, he was just not kind, right? Now, I didn't have any feeling on the inside because I'm not in self. I wasn't afraid of how I looked. I wasn't afraid of being talked to that way. I wasn't afraid that other people were going to think less of me because he talked to me that way. All I felt for this fool was love. And at the end of the meeting, I saw him hanging around and he came up to me and he's like, I think I owe you an immense. And all I did was I fucking hugged him. I hugged him and I told him I loved him. And this fool just cried in my arms. You know what I mean? And then we made an appointment and now I work with him one-on-one, you know, and I take him through the work. And it's because if I had like approached that whole thing from a perspective of self, and I would have gotten mad at that situation, then I would have become his bitch. I would have lent my power to him. But because I'm like coming from a space of unconditional love, only through the diligent daily practice of it, like it allows me to be powerful in every room that I'm in because I know what I am. I know that I'm the light of God. You know, just like that you are, and you are, and you are. I don't think we're any different. I just think all, you know, some of us don't know it yet. Does that make sense?
It does. No, I mean, I see how you're looking at it. Me, I'm a little bit, I'm a little bit more, like I started out different. Religion was put on me, from every which way, whether from a Catholic church, my parents taking me to Baptist school, and then I studied a lot of theology. But I went to a Jesuit high school. The Jesuits are excommunicated. It's a lot of different things that I learned about religion, but in the end, it's the message and your truth is your experience. I could tell you I saw a UFO and you tell me, well, that's a demon. Well, I tell you, if you don't know if you're making love to your own wife or you don't know what God you're praying to, that might be a problem on you. That's not my problem. I know when I pray out, to God, that demon or the devil that other people fearing, that's not going to answer for me. Now, I'm different now. I got into the scriptures more, not on a spiritual level, just for that. Like I had so much of it, but I got back into it on a real level. Where's the money trail go? What books like really had an archaeological value versus historical value? What could really be proven? You know, certain professors that would actually travel there, people that written things. Like I try to look for real things, and then I went from there. So like if I read the Bible, I might look at the two names and I'll say, well, who's fighting? What religion were they? What nationality were they? What was the real division? And I find out more interesting things than the actual, thing about religion. I find out there is a war of a lot of different gods and philosophies. People want to make their drink like this and other people want to make it like that. But in the end, I saw a lot of people, it was about them wanting to get high, have sex, and listen to music just like now. So, the fallen angels, what a lot of people don't realize, as far as from what I believe, they released a lot of that, and they didn't just come to Earth thinking about it. They was up there. They had already saw that. They wanted to start their own thing, but a good conduit was the sex, drugs, and I won't say rock and roll, but they was rocking and rolling to their own music back then. So, I go a little harder and I see some, like I could go deeper in the scripture, but I've seen some things like, say, Nimrod or Gilgamesh. There's a lot of people talking about Nimrod and Gilgamesh these days. But the reason why a lot of people don't know the sun god, that gentleman is who those people like Epstein Island or people who really they want to worship this gentleman. And he has a grave site as far as they're concerned, and his mama does too. Not like the other guys, not like Zeus. You don't go to Zeus's grave, but you got some really rich people that want to trace their bloodline directly back to Nimrod. Why? Because he rebelled against God. So they actually have a notion of somebody that this guy got his power from that they're willing to copy, and they feel that they're successful in this day and time. I mean, and they run everything. I'm not going to even drop the names, but they trace their bloodline back to, and I wonder why is that? So I started looking at the money trail, and I said, well, who is Nimrod? Now, this was a guy using necromancy, science. I mean, he was the first big man that had a lot of knowledge on this earth that people could follow. You know, and it wasn't until he met somebody, say like me or you, that could say, hey, you know what? That's some monkey vomit right there. I found out the real thing. He like, well, hey, look, dude, I'll give you some gold and silver. You get your ass out of here. That's bad for business. But anyway, so I'm like you, man. The drugs and the bad company and the sex could, you know, it could do a lot to a lot of, you know, people, period.
And it's been going on for a long time because back in, well, the late 60s and the early 70s, I used to hitchhike all over California. I used to hitchhike down to Big Sur, Devil's Slide, San Francisco, all over the place. But a lot of people had these like Volkswagens with little flowers on it, or some kind of hippie van or whatever. And there was a bumper sticker, and that bumper sticker would say, cash, gas, or ass, and no one rides for free.
Always.
Zandine, you better never come in my car, man.
I told him I might be one too. He was like, let's go do it.
Nick, can I ask you some questions about your past and about your sobriety? I'm just curious because I've got my own background with it too. My mother ended up taking her own life via drugs. I had gone to AA meetings with her in the past years and years ago. So I'm just curious, what did you have one particular drug of choice, or were you like the human garbage can where you took anything you could get? And it also sounds like you're involved with the program. How many people have you sponsored over the past 25 years?
Okay. I mean, there's drugs that I enjoyed more than others. So in the end, I really enjoyed smoking a shit ton of meth, but I enjoyed everything that I did. Weed turned on me at some point, you know. At some point, weed got me like kind of paranoid and weird. But I don't think that the abnormal reaction to drugs and alcohol that alcoholics and addicts have, which defines them as alcoholics and addicts, I don't think that's substance specific. So I think that any minute or mind altering substance can trigger that abnormal reaction. Sponsorship, that's an interesting word. So it's often like misused and comes with a really fucked up connotation. So the original idea of a sponsor, really, back when AA got started, was if you were the town drunk, right? Because towns were real small back in the day. People knew who you were. And basically what people from the fellowship who were already sober would do is they come visit you in your homes for a few weeks and kind of vet you, right? So they would see, you know, they describe alcoholism to you or drug addiction. They'd see whether or not you've had that abnormal reaction, and they come back and visit you and they'd say, are you really done this time? And they come back and visit you and say, do you want to do this thing, right? And like after that vetting process happened, they would sponsor your bed at a detox, you pay for your bed at a detox, or they would sponsor you into a meeting, right? Because that shit was really anonymous. Versus now where sponsorship is kind of turned into like your fucking therapist or life coach or guru or whatever, or some sort of authoritative figure, when truthfully the spirit of the 12 steps is about erasing hierarchy in the spirit of equality, right? So in that sense, I don't sponsor people, but what I do is I take as many people to the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous as I possibly can. I take them through that book, I teach it to them. So within the last 15 and a half years of my 25 years, I've done well over 16,000 book sessions because I work with 1 to 9 people every single day. So, and then prior to that, I probably sponsored, I don't know, maybe 10 people a year or something. But that was like a different kind of sponsorship. That's where I was like basically being people's life coach, and it felt overwhelming to do 10 people a year or whatever. But I feel that when you make people dependent upon you, you don't allow them to tap in their own inner power. So in teaching people how to teach the book, they find their own practice in terms of tapping into a power greater than itself, which is more like teaching people how to fish rather than giving them fish. Because the thing is that there's no person that can keep another human being sober, right? And I think that what even gets people sober in the first place is usually some sort of divine intervention. Because anyone who's a real alcoholic or a real addict, like my wife always says, is almost like having a car with no brakes, right? There's just no stopping. You put the drugs in, you're just going, there's no stopping it. And what winds up happening is that the universe intervenes, crash into a tree, or the battery dies, or whatever, you know. But it wasn't because you stopped the car, it's because there was some universal exterior intervention. Now, problem with drug addicts and alcoholics is that they have a mental obsession or ability to breathe a lie to themselves that's specific around, you know, not having this allergic reaction. So they tell themselves that they stopped the car even though they hit a tree, right? So that's part of the problem. Um, but yeah, I work with people every single day, and I work
Did
with
you?
people. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I apologize for cutting you off like that. I'm really interested in the subject that we're talking about right now. Have you, being that it's been, you said 25 years, have you ever relapsed yourself, or was it just once that change occurred, that switch flipped and there was no going back with you?
Never relapsed. I tried to kill myself at 5.5 years sober, and I tried to kill myself at 6.5 years sober. So that was the other problem. It's like the way that people within the meetings typically describe how the steps are worked is not really how the original program was designed. So the actual 12-step program is rooted in an altruistic practice or selfless practice. But what you find when you go to meetings is people are meeting dependent because they tell you meeting makers make it. People are sponsor dependent, so they tell you to call your sponsor every day when you're feeling fucked up or when you need to get direction in your life, call your sponsor. And also, how people work the steps is really more conceptual, busy work. And what I mean by that is, you know, they'll have you read something out of literature about step one. Your sponsor will have you do some writing about it. You'll read your writing to your sponsor. And if your sponsor deems it thorough enough, they'll move you to the next step, right? But none of that is actually working with others or helping anybody. That's just self knowledge. And over in the big book, it says self knowledge doesn't do shit for us. Otherwise, we just walk into a meeting our first time, learn that we're alcoholics and addicts, and then never have to go back again because we know what the problem is and never drink. So we need a diligent practice, right? So um, once I was introduced to what the practice was, and that was until I was 9.5 years sober, then I dedicated my life to it. You know, and it was really by God's grace that I made it that long because most people who have done all the fucked up shit that I did sober, because again, we get sober, we don't become white as snow. You know, we're still left with being a human being. And really the selfless practice is the only thing that enacts like a change will become a different kind of person. So without that, I was just struggling with, you know, a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of shame, a lot of guilt over behaviors that I was doing sober. So while I did not relapse, that's not for my credit at all. That's just, I know I'm lucky, you know?
The the two times that you thought about taking your own life, um, how did you get through that? Did you seek medical attention? Were you any type of help that way, or was it your faith that doubled down? Because you said you had two different bouts with it.
Yeah, I definitely didn't have any faith at that time. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been in that position, right? But what I did have was an ex-girlfriend who called the cops on me and had them intervene and take me to the Martin Luther King Jr. Hospital in Watts for a 72-hour hold. So that was my first intervention. And then the second one was about a year later where I called up a friend of mine to get me a gun to blow my brains out. And I was driving to downtown LA to pick up the gun. And the director of the Silver Living Home that I graduated from 5.5 years earlier just called me up and said, "Hey man, how you doing?" And I said, "That's funny you're calling me right now. I'm driving to downtown Los Angeles to blow my brains out with my gun." He's like, "Oh, well, why don't you come by the house?" And I was like, okay. So another divine intervention that just interceded. And I wound up checking myself back into a sober living with 6.5 years sober because I was desperate, you know? So it had nothing to do with me. It was from nothing internal. It was literally the universe conspiring in my favor to save my life.
That's amazing that you didn't have to call for help. Somebody literally called and helped you out of, I mean, the timing couldn't have been more perfect.
Totally.
Have you had similar experiences where you've called other people that you were helping, or people called you for help, you know, to kind of talk them down from the ledge?
All the time. Literally all the time. I have a guy that when I was living in Bali, he used to call me at 3 a.m. like every couple months, telling me about how he wants to kill himself. And I used to talk him off the ledge. But most of the people that I work with today, they start working with others immediately. So it gets them outside of self. So all the self-loathing, self-centered fear, self-pity, all that starts to dissipate. And they have a practice basically, right? So I don't get those calls as much from people who are working with people. It's typically people who are told to work with people from the process, not for me, that don't work with people, that are still in self, that I just talk off the ledge, you know? But yeah, I've taken many of those calls, and I've also gotten to a lot of funerals, man, you know?
Sorry about that. So you find, I guess, service to others is where the real salvation lies, or I guess the handful of worth that gets you through the day. Would that be?
Well, I think a very specific kind of service for an alcoholic or an addict, right? So the alcoholic or addict has to treat their body, their mind, and their spirit. So the body is treated just by being in a safe place. It's not around drugs or alcohol. So that's why they tell you to go to meetings, because if you're at a meeting, you're at the bar, you're not at the liquor store, you're not isolating, don't get a kind drunk, you're not the dealers, right? So that's the abstinence piece. And then we have the mental obsession. The mental obsession is the ability to believe a lie. The end game lie that every alcoholic believes in the end is that they can control and enjoy their drinking, or they don't have the allergy, right? So we need to combat that. Now, the way that that is treated is through the big book, because the big book is the diagnosis of alcoholism. It talks about the allergy in great detail, and it also talks about all the thinking that precedes a relapse into drinking. So if you're working with others every single day out of that book specifically, and you're talking about your experience with allergy and their experience with allergy, and you're thinking that procedure relapse to drinking and theirs, then you don't believe the lie that you don't have the allergy. You don't forget that you have it. So it kind of builds a mental defense against, you know, that part of you that would deceive you at some point and make you think, oh, I can pick up again, or I've never tried that before. That might not be my problem, right? But also, being in the big book, as the way it's described, which is more of like a textbook. And the textbooks are typically found in schools. Schools have teachers and students. So it means that that book needs to be read with another human being. So if you're engaged in a conversation with another human being, you're in the present, right? You're not thinking about your future, the past, you're engaged in this conversation. So the more time you spend in the present, the more time you spend in the truth. The more time you spend in the truth, the less time you spend in the lie. You know, so being in that book also treats your mind as a human being. And then the circus part really treats the spirit. Because again, if I believe in an unconditionally loving God or unconditionally loving universe, whatever you want to call this thing, then the best way to connect to that is to practice being it, right? But in order to work the program, I need to work all three selves. I need to work body, mind, spirit. So to teach someone the book, basically, I'm sitting across from another alcoholic, I'm treating my body, I'm reading the book with them, so I'm treating my mind, and I'm teaching the books and I'm being of service. So that covers all three bases in one fell swoop, which makes me not really dependent upon meetings. The only reason I would go to a meeting today is to find people to help. And it makes me not dependent upon a sponsor, because my sponsor is not going to change my life, but the practice of selflessness will. So that's really the difference. So being in the book with people daily, I think, is important.
The abstinence part of it, I think always found that interesting. And the fact that you've gotten way past that, considering that you're DJing all over the world and everybody knows what goes on at a good rave. So, was it being able to view this thing as an allergy and be like, hey, like I'm allergic to shellfish or something? That's just something that's not for me. That I'm going to hang out, I'm going to have fun with the music, but that's going to end up, it's going to kill me. So like I eat peanuts or something for some people. That's just not, on my palate here.
Totally. That's exactly what it is. But the problem is, like with the mind, it forgets that I have the allergy. So that's why it needs to be treated. But yeah, if I just look at it, and that's like the only thing that defines me as an alcoholic or addict. That's the only thing that separates me from the non-alcoholic. So if I look at it as like, okay, cool, I have an abnormal reaction to drugs and alcohol that I didn't choose to have, that's not my fault, then there's no stigma attached to it either. So when I say I'm an alcoholic, I'm not talking down to myself. I'm just saying, oh, I have an allergy to drugs and alcohol. Which, yeah, it reminds me like, oh, fuck, dude, I can't fucking drink that Moscow Mule, even though it looks really good and I'm on a beach in Bali, sick, So I don't believe the lie that I can, which doesn't mean that I don't think about it sometimes, but I just know that I can. And also, look, being sober as a DJ, bro, watching girls like sitting on bar stools and throwing up on themselves, not super attractive. Watching dudes like getting in fights with each other, not being able to speak and like fucking falling out with each other, like coming out of the bar, like not sick. So none of that shit seems attractive to me. And then also, finding the love of my life and being married to her and understanding like there's nothing that's getting in the way of me being connected to her. Drugs and alcohol is like a great disconnect. And also walking around this earth, understanding power and having it, that's like true power, not false power, and not selling that out to drugs and alcohol, which would only impede that. Like, it's not attractive to me either anymore, So, but that's kind of the time. You know what I mean?
And Michaelis, I understand about that part because I used to be a former dancer, so I used to go to nightclubs all the time. And what kind of stopped me is one time I went to the Black Agnes nightclub, and as I walked in, this guy was all drunk and everything, and he bumped into another guy, and he just went crazy, and he went and broke a bottle and shoved it up into his neck, and he was bleeding all over the place. And the guy just collapsed on the floor. And when I saw that, I said, that's it. I'm done with nightclubs. I'm sick of it. People get drunk. They're using drugs in here and everything else. It's just all fucked up. And I'm done with it.
Yeah. And honestly, if I didn't have a purpose, AKA a career at these nightclubs or stadiums or whatever, I wouldn't fucking be there. Like, there is no amazing conversation that I ever had in a nightclub that was changing, because people are pretty loaded. I've had definitely some funny experiences, but so about DJing is that it was almost like a buffer because it was more about the music and the performance than it was about the interaction. So I didn't feel like I was ever in it. I was like kind of doing my own thing, which was sick.
Yeah, you're there doing a job, but yeah, really cool stuff. I'll steer away from the drugs for a second. How do you feel about EDM, or do you have any feeling about it at all?
Oh man, how do I feel about EDM? If people are having fun, I don't give a fuck, dude. Like I played EDM too when I was DJing, and I think at some point as a DJ, unless you're like really self-centered and just kind of like imposing your will on like you have to listen to my sound, that's it or whatever.
Yeah.
You become like open-minded to really like I want to make people happy. So if this song makes people happy, you're fucking stoked to play it. Because really it's like I'm feeding off the energy, So do I think that there are better styles of music? Do I ever listen to EDM on my own? No. I'm not just like, doing that. But
hey, I'm confused. What is the EDM?
Electronic. Well, that's the other thing. Electronic dance music is such a huge variety. But I think like when you say EDM in this context, you're like talking about what you hear at EDC, like a festival or something.
Yeah, the date was it Electronic Daisy Festival or was something to that effect.
Totally. But like EDM is all kinds of different stuff. There's like some really dope downtempo shit that's like really fucking cool. There's some like stuff that's like 114, 110 BPM. That's like, you know, coming out of Russia and different parts of Europe. That's like really chill, you know, and has a lot of musicality to it. But I think in the context of what you're saying, it's like, you know, just like that trap, dubstep, or like a lot of those sort of very soulless sounds. Yeah, like that's on my vibe today.
I feel like like if I went there, I would literally be grandpa going to see the kids type thing. I would feel so uncomfortable, like I'm the old pervert at the place, because there's nothing but girls old enough to be my daughter or even younger there. But I have to admit I'm envious too, because it looks like they're having a great time.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was DJing with a gray beard, so I felt fucking weird too. You know, I was like Gandalf the fucking wizard in the night. So
Nah, Jacoby, don't trip, man. I make my son drill beats. You know what I mean? Like he's 17, but like I'm you know, I'm 57, so I've been on a drum machine since like 79. MPCs, Sonics, you know, everything. They have Fruity Loops, Pro Tools. I mean, all whatever, anything they got, like before the shit even, you know. So my son was like, dude, you on the drill? I'm like, then I had to tell him, I said, yeah, just get your correction factor. So if you're on the MPC, get you about 57% swing. So you got that tap, 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 tap. But it won't do that on 50% swing. It'll go tap, 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 tap. See, a lot of these kids don't know how to get the correction factor right. So, you know, when they make a beat, they might do it on Fruity Loops or Logic or you know, Ableton or Reasons, whatever. But, you know, us old school, you know, we used to have a drum machine. So yeah, you have to know, you know how to program. So, and you know, a lot of the equipment today, man, it's just an extension of it. So if you stay with it, you know, like you sound like you did all the way up to Serato, you know. So my son, man, like I said, he's 17, but he still has to know. He's like, man, my dad is like, you know, I tell him, man, dude, like but all my friends are like that. They're like, you know, they're still, you know, which is no problem. Listen to Luther Vandross or Whitney Houston or Dio. I listen to Straight Through the Heart every other day anyway.
Yeah, I love Luther Vandross, and I like that you said Fruity Loops, not FL Studio, man. That's fucking cool. They changed that thing.
Yeah, I love a couple of things I want to ask you. I'm sorry, Zandy.
No, I'm done.
Okay. Did you do Pepsi and Gap commercials back in the day?
Pepsi, no. I think I did something for Gap. I did stuff for Armani for.
Nice.
Well, yeah, I used to model for Next a long time ago. Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Okay. And what another thing, Michaelis, okay, and I heard this, and I don't know if it's true or not. Did you do after-hour parties for the Academy Awards?
I did do after-hour parties, and I did do some. Yeah, I did do that a long time ago.
Nice.
There's a lot of stuff that I've actually forgotten, to be honest with you.
And you met a lot of notables too in Hollywood too.
I did all of them.
All of them?
Yeah, the notables.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like back when I was dating that lady I was telling you about. I mean,
okay.
yeah, a lot of her friends were almost like the people that owned those people. So
Yeah.
You didn't go to any P. Diddy parties or anything like that, right?
No, but I met him. No, I met him at I think Ron Burkle's house for an Armani exclusive event. Armani did his first couture fashion show in his backyard, which I feel like calling it a backyard is an understatement. But yeah, I met Diddy there.
I met him at Jack the Rapper, man. Jack, remember that old school rap convention in the Bay Area back in the 90s? Jack the Rapper. And man, that was before anybody knew him. And he came out here with no shirt on and some sweatsuits. And dudes from the Bay Area was like, who is he? You know, it was that type of thing.
Are you talking about Chance the Rapper?
No, we talking about Diddy.
Oh, Diddy.
He came out to Jack. It was a festival called Jack the Rapper where all the up and coming rappers would try to exchange tapes, talk to producers, network. And he was unknown at that time, but he was walking around handing out his tape trying to sign people. He had no shirt on and just some sweatsuit. And, you know, like California, the time he came, Jack the Rapper, it wasn't super hot or anything. But, you know, more importantly, Jacoby, I wanted to ask you, for what music you like now that agrees with your program and how you've been enlightened, like what would be the ideal party for you or the ideal atmosphere, you know, because I know you like the DJ and they like what you do, but that might not be everything that you've evolved to right now. How do you get around that?
Well, truthfully, I stopped DJing. I quit.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I retired probably 4 years ago. And really what happened was is I was like DJing at big stadium in Jakarta, playing with the Chainsmokers. And I was like looking around and thinking to myself, I don't give a fuck that I'm here right now. And I was just thinking about all the people that would want to be in my place. And I was like, man, if I don't feel like inspired, I should probably just walk away. So I did. And that was it. And that, you know, I didn't know what I was going to do for a living or anything. And it was shortly after that that I wrote the book. So, but in terms of music, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I still like shit that's not appropriate, bro. You know, and it has nothing to do with like spirituality or anything, you know? So I think it's just all about my mood, you know what I'm saying?
And I mean, that's real. That's real. I mean, you know, I could see that. I mean, you're only gonna walk the line. I mean, we're all human, so you know, sometimes you know you want to hear what you want to hear. I
Yeah.
mean, I personally I know stuff like cause hey man, I've been rapping since like '79. I mean, like I went through all the stages, man. Even before Tongue Twister and Eminem, all that, man. I got like 28 words a second, you know, like 1,000 a minute. I mean, literally, I got some like clinics with, you know, 412 words, you know, like syllables is different. But I've been doing that shit so long to where like I never got paid like I would have wanted to off of it. But like when you're OG, if I meet some like I meet some young guys in the studio, say like if me and you were in the studio and we were making like whatever new song we like, and it was maybe it wasn't, you know, a top 10 hit or something. And it was some little kids in the studio and they asked, and it's like, hey man, whose beat is that? And they started disrespecting our session, trying to freestyle or do whatever. That's cool. But I'm like, hey, what you a rapper? Oh, what you got, like 1,000 raps? What you got, 100 raps? Hey homeboy, let's make a song together. And then if he starts battling, you know, talking about, you know, whatever he wants, I say, okay, hold on. Stop the music. What, you want to battle? I said, man, look, man, we can't make no money being the best. I said, that's Rocket Science. But since you want to go there, okay, I'll tell you what. Think of 30 words right now. And they're like, what? What you mean 30? I'm like, what? And they go 9 Inch Nails, Budweiser, ice cream, whatever the hell comes to their mind, right? And I have them write it down. I look at it for about a minute, 2 minutes at the most. And then I freestyle each word, 1 through 30. And then I say 30 to 29. I say, you want to know the 12th word? You want to know the 17th? Now, what language you want me to freestyle in? Okay, then I tell them about speed rapping. I said, but that shit ain't getting me paid. And it ain't no good song. I'm not reaching nobody. So, you know, I mean, like, I've been through that, the gamut to where music is now, man. If you could do 40 words or less, you know, I see some beautiful songs. You know, I'll let you go on this one thing because I really like the things you're saying. You like inspiring me. There was a cat I met in LA that was at a homeless park, an unhoused person's park. And the essays asked me, they said, hey man, talk to this dude. You know, we don't see him eat, we don't see him do anything. Like we don't see him, we don't actually see him. He's clean, but he doesn't bother anybody. We haven't heard him talk. So basically they were telling me they thought he was like some kind of hybrid or something. That's really what it sounded like they were saying. I went up to him and I said, hey man, I said, what's this? I'm trying to figure out what's this stuff in the sky. And he stood up, and he's a real tall fellow. He just asked me, he said, hey, he said, where are you from? And I told him, you know, Sacramento. He said, no. I said, Polly Pines. He said, no. When I said this, the real city, he said, okay, now, next time you see something, ask him, how can you help? That's all he said. And all the people in the park like tripped out, like, what did he say? What did he say? And I was like, man. So the next time I saw him, he had artwork, and everything he had was made of the letters out of love, peace, and joy. I mean, everything. He had pictures of things, deers, forests, and if you look close, it was a P-E, you know, P-E-A-C-E, L-O-V-E, you know, J-O-Y. And I was like, wow. So I was mesmerized by that. But not only that, the last thing or two things, he had songs that had maybe 10 or 12 words, but they were really powerful, like about love and your family. You know, he was a really loving guy, gave to the different causes. And they thought he was they thought he just lived on the street. Now it turns out he did have some money. But what he would do, he would sit there and do a 30-point prayer for like the Van Allen bill, all the kids on the phone, radiation. I mean, this dude is incredible. So, you know, you come across people like that. People have their different, systems, but it was a beautiful thing. But it inspired me, like the things you're talking about, what you're going for. You have a purpose, obviously.
Totally. Yeah, that's beautiful. I like that. That's really cool. It's a powerful story.
Yeah,
It's
man.
really cool. Hmm.
Michaelis, I saw a picture with you and some bikers. Who were those bikers?
Oh, they're the Vagos. They're
Oh,
they're
how
my
did you get associated with them?
I started going to this tattoo shop in Hollywood a long time ago. So I've known the president of the Hollywood chapter for over 20 years. And it's not what you think, which is what's interesting, you know? They're really good dudes, also on a very similar path to me. Um, and yeah, I mean, I hang out with them. My wife hangs out with them. Um, but I'm not a part of it just because I don't want to put my wife in any kind of danger. Explain that to them, but they're they're like my family. I love them very much.
So if I saw you and those bikers, you guys are not going to beat me up, right?
Yeah, we're not those dudes actually. And it's funny because when they talk to me about like prospecting for the club, I was like, what I said to them was like, look, um, my principles that I live by are steadfast, and I will never sell them out for anything. So I'm never going to get involved in some stupid shit just because like that's what's being expected because someone made a bad choice. And what they said to me was like, look, man, we have enough killers. Do you want someone like that actually? So they respect everything that I stand for. And they're not out like doing stupid shit or looking for trouble. They're actually like trying to do the opposite, which I think is really cool. Now, I can't say that as the club as a whole, but this particular chapter and the people they hang with are all just really good, solid dudes. So,
That's good. And Nicholas, you recently got married. How did you meet your wife?
well, my wife saw me when she was 20. I was DJing an event in LA. And she's sober too. She was with her sponsor at that time. Her sponsor looked over at her. She said, "Oh, that's Michaelis. He's a sex addict. He'll fuck anything he sees." And my wife thought to herself, "Well, I hope he sees me someday." And then I didn't see her. And then about 6 years later, she came on vacation with her friend in Bali, and someone that we knew back home suggested they come and call me because I was DJing at Show Me Guitar or whatever. And so, yeah, I met her for the first time there. I thought she was the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my entire life. But I was in a relationship, so acted appropriately, showed them a good time. They left. I came back to DJ for NASCAR maybe 4 or 5 months later. She was still on my mind. I reached out to her to see her, and we spent some time together. And I just had this feeling like this is someone special, but I didn't really know what I could do. And I was going back to live in Bali. She was living in LA. And what wound up happening was it's like over Instagram, I just would check in with her every 3, 4, 5 months, whatever. And when I came back to Bali when COVID happened, I just came back to Bali to sort of set some things up so I could, publish this book. And I reached out to her on Instagram, and she had been in a relationship. I didn't know if she was still in a relationship, and I was exiting mine. So I didn't really have any expectations, but I just wanted to see her. And she happened to be out of that relationship, and I went and saw her. And I realized in an instant moment that she was the one for me, that I was in love with her and I couldn't be with anybody else. And that was kind of a miraculous thing for me because I'd been a serial cheater my entire life. And this is the first person that I've ever been able to maintain an argument with. And we've just worked to build a foundation of like honesty and vulnerability, which perpetuated that thing. She's the absolute love of my life, closest person to me. And I, yeah, fucking love her. So it was a miracle, which lets me know, like, if you have the one, like, you can't escape them. Like, she was literally, I was introduced to her life like 3 different times. You know what I mean? Like, there was no getting away from that. So I believe the one exists for everybody. And I believe that you don't have to settle. You know? So
I've seen your podcasting. You two really have good chemistry together. I like
yeah,
that.
yeah, she's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. And are you planning to write any more books?
Well, I think I might do like a daily sort of meditation book where you kind of like read like different principles and like meditative on it, or when you're driving your car, think about it for like each day of the week. It's possible, but I think that the book that I wrote is more of a practice than it is a book. So it should be read with different people, not just read by yourself, because it's the whole point of altruism or kind of like building vulnerable and intimate relationships through honest conversation with other people. So I think like more people need to be in that practice for them to even like conceptualize what my next book would be about. Because if you don't have that practice, then you're still living in fear. You're still living in self. So if I was going to write a book about, relationships and stuff like that, you have to have that foundation before you could even engage in that other thing, you know? So maybe we'll see. I didn't even plan to write that book, dude. I didn't fucking read. You know? So yeah.
Very cool. Michaelis, how can people buy your book?
Oh, it's on Amazon. It's very simple. But yeah, you can get all over the world. I'm gonna have it translated in different languages. I think I might release new editions and basically have like people's stories in the back of the book of their experience with the book. And that's what I'll do. But
Yeah, that's a good idea. Getting people who had experiences like you to write their story, place it into the book. Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
yeah, totally.
And that way, also, too, you're not all alone. There's other people just like you going through the same shit
Yes.
that you're going through.
Exactly. And that's like the whole purpose of having these conversations, because I think a lot of like why we feel shame or guilt or fear is because we do think that we're unique and we're the only person that's been through that or had that experience or done that thing to that person. But when you actually just talk to people, which is the benefit of working with so many people in my life, non-alcoholics and alcoholics, non-addicts and addicts, is that I realize we're all the same, we're not any different. And even the way that people react to certain experiences are pretty much the same. But yeah, you won't really know that and understand that you have a community around you until you talk to them. And if you don't talk to them honestly, you can never really connect,
And Nicholas, you and me, we totally have different lives here. When I went into the army in 1973, I went in as an MP, as a military policeman. And when I got over to Germany, they had a thing called the khaki mafia. They were involved with drug running, prostitution, the whole shebang. And they needed cool guys like myself to work undercover with CID, Criminal Investigation Division, Drug Suppression Team.
Right.
So I traveled throughout Germany on your taxpayer money and buying drugs. I was buying black opium, hash, uh, blonde Lebanese, tripping red, heroin, LSD, barbiturates, quaaludes, you name it, I was buying it. And I was testifying at Article 32s and court martials and putting these people away. And at that time, and then you called me pork chops. That was my undercover name. At that time, um, when I would meet these people using drugs, I mean, some of them like were really cool, and I acted cool and everything else. I acted like I was their friend, but I was out to bust them. And my mindset at the time, I was sort of, and I have to say this, I was prejudiced about people using drugs.
Right.
But then as I got older, I started understanding, that they were going through this and they're going through that and they needed this and they needed that. I started to understand and open my eyes to the fact that these people are not evil. They just need help.
Totally right. And I think, look, anyone who uses drugs or drinks alcohol, they're doing it for the same reason, right? To numb out, to chill out, or to basically celebrate. Now, that stuff can be expressed through not just drugs, it can be expressed through sex, it can be expressed through gambling, through food, through all kinds of different things. So, um, who are we to judge anybody, really? So that's the thing. It's about having these like open conversations and looking at, okay, cool. What is the driving force for someone to even make a decision to go and cheat on somebody else or use that drug or give their family's money away or whatever, you know? Now, where alcoholics and addicts are concerned, like they can't use the drugs to treat whatever they're treating because they have an allergy to it. So they wind up like doing some crazy fucking shit because they can't stop once they start, you know? So that's where I think a lot of like prejudice or judgment kind of comes into play with alcoholics and addicts because people don't understand that they have an allergy. They can't really help themselves once they start. And so that opens up the door to all kinds of crazy stuff. But yeah, everyone's doing the same shit, you know, um, and being quiet about it too. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. My eyes have definitely opened up. So, and I learned a lot from you, Nicholas. So, yeah, it's helped a lot.
yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And Zandy, and I'm going to tell you something. Phil knows the secret. Phil goes, "How do you know this guy?" And I go, "Well, he's my nephew. He's my brother's son."
He's like nepotism.
So
Hey, you talking about, when I was talking about the bikers, I, Nicholas, I don't know if I told you, but we have actually two cousins down in San Jose, and one of Fedicino Villalobos
Mhm.
Jr. And he was a San Jose Gypsy Joker, and he's now a Hell's Angel.
Right.
And then our other cousin, Will Villalobos, he was a lifetime Marine, and now he's a Hell's Angel. So we got two cousins who are Hell's Angels, and I believe Phil. Don't worry, I'm not going to have them on this show.
That's
I
funny.
We can have
promise.
a lot of show.
I
We can have,
promise.
I ran into a couple of Mongols that I ended up buying a bike off of once. Nicest guys you ever want to meet. You
Yeah.
know, they were all veterans. We started shooting the shit. I was just like, wow. Because at first I saw them, I'm like, all right, am I here? Am I at the wrong place? But really cool people turned out to be.
Oh,
Yeah, really cool. I'm always surprised when I go to these like biker events. I guess I'm not surprised, but I always wind up like sitting down with some dude who looks like, you know, I don't know, like your quintessential biker, and having some deep ass conversation with this dude, you know, which is really a beautiful thing to see. And I think like when we understand that we are purpose and we bring it to whatever situation we're in, you can have a deep conversation with anybody. That's actually really cool. So yeah.
Yep.
that's true. You ever, well, some of us belong to like a men's team, not a group, but a team. But if you belong to a team that's worldwide, pretty much whatever they're affiliated with, sometimes they have to draw lines. But when it comes to our team, there are no lines. I could be in France, I could be in Germany. I could say, hey, look, I'm over here at this Burger King. It's dirty as fuck. I know you got a strike company. How soon can you be here? And he's like, well, 35 minutes. I'm like, be here in 30. And I can go down the line with like maybe two other guys that he referred me to, and we'll keep time because our time is precious, So, but those people, you never know what they're involved in outside the team, and then you find out, and like you're real surprised, just that they hold a line for that. But it's a trip because it's just like if you go to jail, and you think you're not going. I mean, if you're gonna draw aside, and you think you might be cool with somebody outside, but you get in there. I mean, you can't have that affiliation. So it's like, but on a men's team outside, if you got 10 of these guys on a city block, the kids would be safe. And so, guys much like yourself, and so wherever they come from, we don't even go by that. It's like, what's your purpose and your standards. So
Yeah, totally. I think like the goal is to affiliate with everybody, right? Like, what are these fictitious lines that we draw in the sand around each other anyway? Um, which is why, like, when we were like, you guys were talking about like politics and all and stuff like that, and I just like can't really get myself to buy into any of these systems today because I think it's all bullshit. I think borders, countries, nationalism, politics, leaders, money, like it's just distraction. It's not really fucking real. And so like mostly invested in any of that stuff just seems like a waste of time. And the only truth is that I'm sitting in front of you guys right now, right?
It's a distraction. It's a distraction. It's watch this hand so you don't know what this hand is doing.
Totally. And that was like the thing. So I was in Bali and I was like got on this real Illuminati trip, right? And I started going down these fucking rabbit holes on this stuff because I met this dude who was like a French noble who was escaped his family, who was all part of like the French Illuminati. And he was like confirming all kinds of crazy fucking stories. I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to research this shit. So I would spend hours on my computer or phone just researching and trying to get to the truth and seeing where the money, like all that stuff that you're talking about, Andy, right?
yeah.
And then I had this moment where I was just like, damn, dude, like you can't find the truth there. Like for every article that says this, there's 10 that disprove it. I'm just like, what the fuck? There's like no getting to it. Then I just looked up and I was like, oh shit. I'm looking out at this fucking beautiful jungle in my backyard in fucking Bali. I'm like, this is the truth. This is the only truth that I could be sure of right now. Like, why am I even wasting my time with this? So now I can look at that stuff as entertainment, but definitely not get emotionally invested because really the only truth is what's in front of you. You know what I'm saying?
You know what, Jacoby? I gotta chime in with you on this because I want a few people to hit on this in a way I could say. So, like with YouTube, it's a perfect principle of what you're saying. On YouTube, get this. Everything is, here's the proper way you do it. So we're talking about a triangle type. Here's the proper way you do it. Here's the worst way you do it. And here's the new scroll way we found, the new lost way we found. So they got that three-pronged bullshit right there, and you represent whatever products they got on the page. But the only truth is like, say like you thought you saw a green UFO in 95, but you never got a picture of it. And then here you are on YouTube, and then you see me from wherever, whatever state, but I got the same picture, and you know it because you saw the same thing. You're like, hey, listen, we got the same shit. That's the only way I can vet through all that. But other than that, it's like you said, man, no matter how they explain it, you look on TV. I mean, that's all actors and spirits taking on different things, and we're agreeing to follow along with that. If you look at the politics, if you look at the trends, the teams, all this shit is just built up stuff. But like, when is life, not so dull where you can just enjoy, the wind breeze, the blade of grass, listen to the sounds, and I'm with you there, man. But it does. You got to go through a lot of shit to get back to that sometimes.
Yeah, totally. Or you have a practice that launches you in the present. So like that's the thing. It's like if I understand my purpose, that means that I have an intention for every moment, which means that like I don't waste a moment. Like I walk down the street, I say hello to every single person I walk by. I hit every single dog that I see. I am just trying to be kind and interject, like sorry, not interject, but engage with everything because that's my practice of getting myself present in that truth. And then I have like the practice that I have with the book work I'm talking about, whether it's my book or the big book or whatever, where I just use that to get myself present. So that's that, which allows me to not be emotionally invested in all this other shit that really, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't matter. I mean, it's crazy to think that there aren't fucking UFOs or spirits or that we know everything or that like everything's contained to this earth. Like that's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
So of course I'm open to everything, right?
I like what you said about the notion. You have, why go even further when you have a notion? You could say hi. You could do, you can enjoy every single moment. I like that, man.
Totally. And you know what? I'm not weirdo when there's nobody around. I'll talk to the fucking butterflies that are hanging out in my backyard, because they're people too, dog.
Oh no, man. Plants, all of them. We talk to all of them. Yeah, come on.
Yeah, like with me, I respect all life, especially animal life. And I was devastated when I heard Peanut and Fred the raccoon were killed by the department over at New York. I mean, I was really devastated, really, because I used to watch some of the videos of Peanut and everything else, and for them to be so thoughtless and taking that poor little squirrel and killing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of any cruelty at all. So
Yeah.
Well, it was great meeting you, Nicholas. Truly appreciate your time tonight. We're a little bit past the hour, but I'm sure if we wanted to, we could keep you talking tonight.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And let's do it again. Talk about
Oh yeah, absolutely, Nicholas. We'll bring you back on.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's an honor, you guys. Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I should meet you. I'll see you guys soon.
All right.
All right.